At 25 years old, I was convinced I was cursed. While my friends were buying their first homes, I was counting coins to buy lunch. While they talked about their retirement plans, I was worried about making rent. I had this crazy idea that some people were just born lucky with money and others weren't. I thought wealth was something that happened to other people, not people like me. Then I met a man who asked me one simple question that changed everything. Jim, what if I told you that wealth isn't something you chase, but something that chases you? Here's what I've learned after all these years. Wealth isn't about the money you make, it's about the money that works for you while you sleep. It's not about your paycheck, it's about your philosophy. And the difference between these two ways of thinking will determine whether you spend your life working for money or whether money works for you. I remember meeting my mentor, a successful businessman, who changed everything I thought I knew about money. I was complaining about my financial situation, making excuses about the economy, about my boss, about everything except the one thing that mattered, me. He looked at me with this knowing smile and said, Jim, you've been looking at this all wrong. Poor people work for money. Wealthy people have money work for them. That conversation shook me to my core because I realized I had been thinking like a poor person my entire life. I was focused on earning more when I should have been focused on attracting more. You see, there's a fundamental difference between these two approaches. When you work for money, you trade your time for dollars. When money works for you, you create systems, investments, and assets that generate income whether you're working or not. The truth is, most people are caught in what I call the earning trap. They think the solution to their financial problems is to work harder, work longer hours, or find a better paying job. But here's what you don't understand. If you don't change your thinking, it doesn't matter how much more you make, you'll still end up in the same place. I've seen people making six figures who are just as broke as people making minimum wage. Why? Because they never developed the habits that attract wealth. Let me share something with you that will change how you think about money forever. Wealth is attracted to people who think in a certain way. It's attracted to people who have developed specific habits, who ask different questions, who see opportunities where others see problems. And the first habit that attracts wealth is developing what I call a wealth mindset. Now, what do I mean by a wealth mindset? It starts with understanding that your current financial situation is a direct result of your current thinking. If you want to change your financial situation, you must first change your thoughts. Poor people think about what they can't afford. Wealthy people think about how they can afford it. Poor people see obstacles. Wealthy people see opportunities. Here's a simple example that illustrates this perfectly. When poor people see an expensive item they want, they say, I can't afford that. When wealthy people see the same item, they ask, how can I afford that? You see the difference? One statement shuts down your mind, the other opens it up to possibilities. I learned this from watching my mentor. When we drive through expensive neighborhoods, I'd look at those beautiful homes and think, I'll never be able to afford something like that. He'd look at the same homes and say, I wonder what kind of business that person built to afford a home like that. Same houses, completely different thoughts, and those different thoughts led to completely different results in our lives. The language you use about money reveals your financial philosophy. Poor people use poverty language. They say things like money doesn't grow on trees, or the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, or I'm not made of money. Every time they speak, they're reinforcing their poverty mindset. Wealthy people use abundance language. They say things like there's plenty of opportunity, or money flows to value, or I choose to be wealthy. Let me tell you about the compound effect of your daily decisions. Every day, you make small choices that seem insignificant in the moment, but compound over time into major results. Poor people make poor choices not because they're bad people, but because they haven't developed the habit of thinking long-term. They choose immediate gratification over long-term wealth building. Here's what I mean. A poor person gets their paycheck and thinks, what can I buy with this? A wealthy person gets their paycheck and thinks, how much of this can I invest? Same paycheck, different questions, different results. The poor person focuses on consumption, the wealthy person focuses on creation. Wealthy people understand that every dollar is a seed. They can either eat the seed or plant it. Poor people eat their seeds and then wonder why their financial garden never grows. Wealthy people plant their seeds consistently, water them with knowledge and patience, and eventually harvest the fruits of compound growth. But developing a wealth mindset isn't just about changing your vocabulary or asking better questions. It's about fundamentally shifting how you see yourself in relationship to money and opportunity. Poor people see themselves as victims of circumstances. Wealthy people see themselves as creators of circumstances. When I was struggling financially, I blamed everything and everyone except myself. I blamed my boss for not paying me enough. I blamed the government for high taxes. I blamed the economy for being tough. My mentor helped me understand that this victim mentality was keeping me poor. He said, "Jim, if you want your life to change, you have to change. If you want things to get better, you have to get better." That's when I realized that wealth building isn't primarily about money. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts wealth. It's about developing the character, the skills, the knowledge, and the habits that wealthy people have. Because here's the thing, if you took all the money in the world and divided it equally among everyone, within 5 years, the wealthy people would be wealthy again, and the poor people would be poor again. Why? Because wealth isn't about the money you have, it's about who you become. The first habit that attracts wealth is making the decision to think differently about money, about opportunity, about your potential. It's choosing to see abundance instead of scarcity, possibilities instead of problems, solutions instead of obstacles. And once you make that mental shift, something magical starts to happen. Opportunities that were always there suddenly become visible to you. That question haunted me for weeks. How could wealth chase me when I could barely catch a break? But my mentor wasn't done teaching me. He said something that hit me like a lightning bolt. "Jim, you're dressed like success on the outside, but you're thinking like failure on the inside. You spent $500 on that suit, but you haven't invested $5 in your mind this year." He was absolutely right. There I was, trying to look successful, while my thinking was still stuck in poverty. I had invested more money in my wardrobe than in my education. That's when I learned the second habit that attracts wealth, reading and continuous learning. Let me tell you, this habit alone can transform your life faster than anything else you'll ever do. Here's what most people don't understand. Formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. Now, I'm not knocking formal education. It's important. But the education that really counts, the education that builds wealth, that happens after you leave school, that's when you start. Learning about money, about business, about investing, about human nature, about success principles that they never taught you in any classroom. I was a high school dropout working at a department store making pennies and going nowhere fast. But once I started reading books about success, about wealth building, about how money really works, everything changed. Not overnight, mind you, but gradually, consistently, powerfully. I discovered that every book I read was like having a conversation with someone who had already walked the path I wanted to walk. The wealthy people I started studying all had one thing in common. They were voracious readers. They consumed information like hungry people consume food. But here's the key difference I noticed. Poor people read for entertainment. Wealthy people read for education. Poor people read to escape their problems. Wealthy people read to solve their problems. When I started my journey of self-education, I made a commitment to read at least 30 minutes every day. Not magazines, not newspapers filled with bad news, but books written by people who had achieved what I wanted to achieve. Business books, investment books, personal development books, biographies of successful people. And you know what happened? My thinking started to change. My vocabulary started to change. My conversations started to change. And eventually my bank account started to change. Here's something fascinating I discovered about learning. It compounds just like interest in a bank account. Every book you read builds on the knowledge from the previous books. Every new concept connects with other concepts you've learned. Before you know it, you start seeing patterns, connections, opportunities that were invisible to you before. You develop what I call educated eyes, the ability to see value and opportunity where others see nothing. But learning isn't just about reading books. Wealthy people learn from every source available to them. They listen to audio programs while driving. They attend seminars and workshops. They find mentors. They associate with people who know more than they do. They turn their car into a mobile university, their commute into classroom time. Poor people complain about their drive to work. Wealthy people use that same drive time to educate themselves. Same car, same road, same time, but completely different results. One person arrives at work frustrated and negative. The other arrives educated and inspired. Over the course of a year, that adds up to hundreds of hours of additional education. The third habit that attracts wealth is building multiple income streams. This was another eye-opening lesson from my mentor. He asked me, "Jim, how many ways do you get paid?" I said, "One way, my job." He shook his head and said, "That's your first mistake. You're one paycheck away from disaster." He told me a story about a farmer who decided to plant only corn on his entire farm. One year, a disease wiped out the corn crop and the farmer lost everything. The next year, a wiser farmer planted corn, wheat, soybeans, and had a small orchard. When the corn disease came again, he still had 3 other income sources to sustain him. That's when I understood diversification isn't just an investment strategy, it's a survival strategy. Most people are financial farmers with only one crop, their job. They're completely dependent on one source of income from one employer who could eliminate their position at any time. Wealthy people understand this vulnerability, so they create multiple streams of income. They have their primary business or career, but they also have investments, rental properties, royalties, business partnerships, and other sources of passive income. Here's what's beautiful about multiple income streams. While you're sleeping, some of your money is working. While you're at your day job, your investments are growing. While you're on vacation, your rental properties are generating income. You stop trading time for money and start creating money that works independently of your time. But creating multiple income streams requires a different way of thinking about money. Poor people think about money as something you spend. Wealthy people think about money as something you multiply. When poor people get extra money, they think, "What can I buy?" When wealthy people get extra money, they think, "Where can I invest this to create more money?" I learned to ask myself different questions about money. Instead of asking, "How much will this cost me?" I started asking, "How much will this make me?" Instead of asking, "What's the price?" I started asking, "What's the return?" These simple shifts in questioning led to completely different financial decisions. The wealthy person's approach to money is like a gardener's approach to seeds. They don't eat all their seeds. They plant most of them to grow more plants that produce more seeds. Poor people eat their seeds and then wonder why their financial garden stays empty. They consume their capital instead of multiplying it. Learning changed everything for me because it showed me how money really works. I discovered that money flows toward value. The more valuable you become, the more money flows toward you. The more problems you can solve, the more money wants to find you. The more people you can serve, the more the marketplace rewards you. And that's what connects learning to earning. Knowledge makes you more valuable. Every skill you develop, every book you read, every principle you understand makes you worth more to the marketplace. Your income tends to equal your value to the marketplace. If you want to earn more, become worth more. If you want to attract more wealth, become more attractive to wealth through continuous learning and growth. But here's what I discovered about learning and earning. Knowledge alone isn't enough. You can read every business book ever written, but if you're still hanging around with people who think small, you'll stay small. This brings me to the fourth habit that attracts wealth, and it might be the most important one. Cultivating relationships with successful people. Let me tell you something that will change your life. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Not physically average, but mentally, emotionally, and financially average. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. If you're spending time with people who complain about money, guess what you'll do? Complain about money. If you're spending time with people who make excuses, you'll become an excuse maker. But if you spend time with people who solve problems, you'll become a problem solver. When I was struggling financially, I was surrounded by other struggling people. We'd get together and talk about how hard life was, how unfair the system was, how the rich people had all the advantages. We were like a support group for failure, reinforcing each other's limiting beliefs and keeping each other stuck. I didn't realize it at the time, but those relationships were actually making me poorer. My mentor opened my eyes to this reality. He said, "Jim, if you want to be successful, you need to change your associations. You need to spend less time with people who are going nowhere and more time with people who are going somewhere." That was tough to hear because some of these people were my friends. But I had to make a choice. Did I want to be loyal to my friends or loyal to my future? Here's what I learned about successful people. They think differently, they talk differently, they act differently. When you're around them, their way of thinking starts to rub off on you. They use different vocabulary. Instead of saying, "I can't afford it," they say, "How can I afford it?" Instead of saying, "That's not possible," they say, "How can we make it possible?" Instead of focusing on problems, they focus on solutions. I started seeking out successful people, not to ask them for money or favors, but to learn from them. I wanted to understand how they thought, how they made decisions, how they approached challenges. And you know what I discovered? Most successful people are willing to share their knowledge if you approach them with genuine respect and curiosity. But here's the key. You can't just take from successful people. You have to give value back. Wealthy people are attracted to other people who bring value to the relationship. They want to associate with people who are growing, who are contributing, who are making things happen. If all you do is take and never give, you'll find yourself on the outside looking in. I learned to approach relationships strategically, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that created mutual benefit. I asked myself, what can I bring to this relationship? Sometimes it was my enthusiasm, sometimes it was my willingness to work hard, sometimes it was a skill I had developed. The point is, I always tried to give before I received. Successful people network differently than unsuccessful people. Poor people network when they need something, when they're looking for a job, when they need money, when they're in trouble. Wealthy people network when they don't need anything. They build relationships consistently over time by being helpful and valuable to others. Here's a principle that changed my life. The more you serve others, the more the universe serves you. Wealth flows to people who create value for other people. The marketplace is constantly asking one question, what value are you bringing? And it rewards that value with money. The more people you serve, the more problems you solve, the more needs you meet, the more wealth flows toward you. I started looking at business differently. Instead of asking, how can I make money? I started asking, how can I serve people? Instead of thinking about what I could get, I started thinking about what I could give. This shift in thinking led to opportunities I never would have seen before. Let me tell you about the power of serving others. When you genuinely help someone succeed, they remember. When you solve someone's problem, they remember. When you make someone's life better, they remember. And in business, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. People refer business to people who have helped them. People partner with people who have proven their value. I met a businessman who told me something that stuck with me forever. He said, "Jim, I don't chase money, I chase problems to solve. The bigger the problem I can solve, the more money chases me." That's when I understood that wealth isn't about taking value from the marketplace, it's about bringing value to the marketplace. Think about any successful business you know. What are they doing? They're solving problems. They're meeting needs. They're making people's lives better, easier, more enjoyable, more productive. The better they serve their customers, the more successful they become. The marketplace rewards value creation with financial rewards. But serving others isn't just about business. It's about developing the character that naturally attracts wealth. When you become the kind of person who genuinely cares about helping others succeed, you become magnetic to opportunities. People want to work with you, invest with you, partner with you, refer business to you. Here's what most people get wrong about networking and relationships. They think it's about collecting business cards or attending networking events. That's not networking, that's socializing. Real networking is about building genuine relationships based on mutual respect and shared value. It's about becoming the kind of person that other successful people want to be around. Successful people are attracted to other people who are positive, who are growing, who are contributing. They want to associate with people who inspire them, challenge them, and help them become better. If you want to attract successful people into your life, you need to become someone worth knowing. I started investing in my own personal development, not just to improve my skills, but to become more interesting, more valuable, more attractive as a business partner and friend. I read not just business books, but books on history, philosophy, psychology, science. I developed hobbies and interests that made me a more well-rounded person. I worked on my communication skills, my listening skills, my ability to add value to conversations. The truth is, your network is your net worth, but not in the way most people think. It's not about knowing rich people so they'll give you money. It's about knowing successful people so you can learn from them, grow with them, and create value together. When you approach relationships this way, something magical happens. Opportunities start flowing toward you naturally. Now you might be thinking, Jim, this all sounds great, but what's the real secret? What's the one thing that separates those who build wealth from those who just dream about it? Well, let me tell you about the fifth and final habit that attracts wealth, and this one might be the hardest pill to swallow. Practicing financial discipline and delayed gratification. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Wealthy people do what poor people won't do. They make sacrifices today so they can live better tomorrow. Poor people make choices today that feel good but cost them their future. It's that simple and that difficult. I learned this lesson by watching two of my friends who started their careers at exactly the same time, making exactly the same salary. Let me call them Tom and Jerry. Both earned $50,000 a year. Both were smart, hardworking guys. But 5 years later, Tom was driving a luxury car and living in debt, while Jerry had built a substantial investment portfolio and was well on his way to financial independence. What made the difference? Every month when Tom got his paycheck, he asked himself, what can I buy with this money? When Jerry got his paycheck, he asked himself, how much of this can I save and invest? Tom lived paycheck to paycheck in style. Jerry lived below his means and invested the difference. Same income, different philosophy, completely different results. This is what I call the marshmallow test for adults. You remember that famous study where they put a marshmallow in front of children and told them they could eat it now or wait 15 minutes and get 2 marshmallows? The children who could delay gratification ended up more successful in life. Well, adults face the same test every day with money. You can spend it now for immediate pleasure or invest it now for future wealth. Most people fail this test because they've never learned the power of compound interest. Albert Einstein supposedly called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. He said those who understand it earn it, those who don't pay it. And he was absolutely right. Compound interest is either working for you or against you. If you're saving and investing, it's your best friend. If you're borrowing and spending, it's your worst enemy. Let me give you a simple example that will blow your mind. If you invest just $200 a month starting at age 25, earning an average return of 8%, you'll have over $500,000 by age 65. But if you wait until age 35 to start, you'll have less than half that amount. The power of compound interest rewards those who start early and stay consistent. But here's what most people do instead. They say, I'll start investing when I make more money, or I'll start saving when I pay off my debts, or I'll start investing when the market gets better. These are all just excuses for not developing the discipline to live below their means and invest consistently. Wealthy people understand that building wealth isn't about how much you make, it's about how much you keep and invest. I've known people making 6 figures who were broke, and people making modest incomes who became millionaires. The difference wasn't their income, it was their discipline. Here's a principle that changed my financial life. Pay yourself first. Before you pay any bills, before you buy anything, set aside a percentage of your income for investing. Treat this like the most important bill you have to pay. Because in a way, at Island, you're paying your future self, and your future self will thank you for it. But financial discipline isn't just about saving money. It's about making smart decisions with every dollar. Wealthy people think about the opportunity cost of their purchases. When they're considering buying something, they don't just think about what it costs, they think about what else they could do with that money. For example, if you're thinking about buying a fancy coffee every day for $5, a wealthy person would calculate that over a year. That's over $1,800. Invested at 8%, that money could grow to over $14,000 in 20 years. Suddenly, that daily coffee doesn't seem like such a small expense. This is what I mean by living below your means. It's not about being cheap or depriving yourself of everything you enjoy. It's about being intentional with your money, about understanding the long-term cost of your short-term decisions. It's about choosing what matters most to you and saying no to everything else. Wealthy people also understand the importance of having what most people call an emergency fund, but what I prefer to call an opportunity fund. This is money set aside not just for emergencies, but for opportunities. Because here's what happens when you have cash available. Opportunities become visible to you that are invisible to people who are living paycheck to paycheck. When a great investment opportunity comes along, when a business partner needs capital, when real estate prices drop, the person with cash can take advantage. The person without cash can only watch these opportunities pass by. Your opportunity fund gives you options, and options give you power. But let me tell you something even more important than all these financial strategies. Wealth building is ultimately about who you become, not what you do. The habits that attract wealth are really habits that build character. They develop discipline, patience, vision, integrity, and service to others. Money is attracted to good people who do good things. When you develop the discipline to delay gratification, you become stronger. When you develop the wisdom to invest rather than consume, you become wiser. When you develop the habit of serving others, you become more valuable. When you develop the patience to let compound interest work, you become more mature. Wealth is simply the natural byproduct of becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts it. I want to challenge you with something. These 5 habits we've talked about: developing a wealth mindset, continuous learning, building multiple income streams, cultivating relationships with successful people, and practicing financial discipline. They're not magic formulas. They're not get-rich-quick schemes. They're lifestyle changes that require commitment, consistency, and patience. The beautiful thing is you can start implementing these habits today. You can start reading for 30 minutes a day today. You can start changing your vocabulary about money today. You can start saving and investing a percentage of your income today. You can start looking for ways to serve others today. You can start seeking out relationships with people who inspire you today. Here's something else wealthy people understand about discipline that poor people miss. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. You don't have to get it right every single day, but you do have to get it right most days. Wealthy people understand that building wealth is like building muscle. It happens gradually through consistent effort over time, not through one heroic burst of activity. I learned this lesson the hard way. When I first started investing, I thought I had to save huge amounts every month to make a difference. When I couldn't save as much as I wanted, I'd get discouraged and stop saving altogether. My mentor taught me that a small amount saved consistently beats a large amount saved sporadically. He said, "Jim, the key is to make it automatic. Pay yourself first, even if it's just $50 a month." The habit is more important than the amount. That advice transformed my approach to wealth building. I set up automatic transfers from my checking account to my investment account. I didn't have to rely on willpower or remember to do it, it just happened. And you know what? After a few months, I didn't even miss that money. I had learned to live on less, and my wealth was growing automatically. This is what I call the philosophy of automation. Wealthy people automate their wealth building so they don't have to depend on motivation or willpower. They set up systems that work whether they feel like it or not. Poor people rely on feelings and motivation, which come and go. Wealthy people rely on systems and habits, which work consistently. But here's the deeper truth about discipline. It's really about integrity with yourself. When you say you're going to save a certain amount each month and you do it, you're building self-trust. When you say you're going to read for 30 minutes a day and you do it, you're proving to yourself that your word means something. This self-integrity becomes the foundation for all success in life. Wealthy people keep their promises to themselves. They do what they say they're going to do, especially the small things that nobody else sees. Poor people make excuses for why they can't keep their commitments to themselves. They say they'll start tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. But tomorrow never comes for people who always postpone their discipline. Let me share one final story that brings everything together. A few years ago, I met a janitor who had accumulated over $1 million in investments. People were amazed. How could someone making minimum wage become a millionaire? The secret wasn't complex. He had been saving and investing 20% of every paycheck for 30 years. He lived in a modest apartment, drove an old car, and invested the difference. While his co-workers spent their money on things that depreciated, he bought things that appreciated. What struck me most about this man wasn't his wealth, but his wisdom. He understood something that most people never learn, that wealth building isn't about making a lot of money, it's about making smart decisions with whatever money you have. He had developed the character that attracts wealth: discipline, patience, vision, and the ability to delay gratification. Remember that young man I was at 25, convinced I was cursed with bad luck? He discovered that wealth wasn't something that happened to other people. He learned that wealth was something that happened to people who developed the right habits, the right thinking, the right relationships, and the right discipline. And if it can happen to him, it can happen to you, but you have to start. You have to take that first step. You have to plant those seeds today if you want to harvest wealth tomorrow. The best time to start building wealth was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. Don't let another day pass without taking action on what you've learned. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make today.